titled The Gate for Entering the Way of a Pandita by Jamgon Mipam Rinpoche. And the text is generally outlined by 3 main sections. First come the 10 topics of expertise, then the 4 seals of Dharma, and finally the 4 right discriminations. And out of those 3 sections, we are currently discussing the first one, the 10 topics of expertise. From the 10 topics, we have already covered a number, being the aggregates, the elements, sense sources, interdependence, the correct and the incorrect, the faculties, and time. And right now we're discussing the 8th topic, which is the topic of the truth. The truths are discussed in terms of the 4 noble truths. And out of those, we have already covered the truth of suffering and are currently discussing the truth of origin. The truth of origin is further divided into a discussion of karma and a discussion of the disturbing emotions. And from a number of different ways of looking at the disturbing emotions, we're currently discussing the different ways of classifying the disturbing emotions.
Dila tini khasan de sam shasa de to ngun la insa de do me temba chini mas de ni la insa de do ni la so tigire khasan sam de deyang deba cholwa mabang pe debi docha tang khongde bangyal yebar gyuros ta 단지 휴반한 신제 단단하죠 군중 다 녀몽바 갑라 녀몽비게 남장 민자 메다 멍보여스 티캅가 방ኛ를 세도 아니 가고 지바 갑가 아니 단다 군조를 해도라 아니 가상 자샤나 베나 군지 해도 아니 추고 해도 대낭 신기 지내다 방ኛ를 해야 돼 가상들라와 아니 deba cholwa mapang pese deba cholwa shewade tanda te kabla dokham ki docha tinzorwa dokham ki sokta tiro rekcha debi longjo la yengwa de deba cholwa de mapang na debi docha tang khongru ke bangyal denzo gebar gyoro se tini debi docha tang ni dokham ki khongru denzo ge bangyal de gebar gyoro 방ኛ를 생 아니 방ኛ를 꼴게 저시디 갑들라 방냐를 생인데 빼 차우지 빼나 군카 심나 매 망고 숏네 되네 숏 서비스라데 메세게 탑라 추도 또르나 되네 야가라소바 차르와 잡나양 되네 매 칠록의 희와 더 통나양 동복이 행동 난라 매게 뉴바도 다매 충충충충 다 행동이 낭낭라 동복이 낭낭라 류대요 와서도 어딘데를 빼샤나기도 방냐를 생인데 도차 공도 나서봐 다 매첨부 바로 왔는 신신은 원규로한테 마인나 양 공적은 뉴바도지 빼샤샤나 신나 매측네 추도르사비 제라 신 치로게 매만 바바데 시나양 동복이 남라 도다 매기 뉴바 입대에 왔어도 빼디나 신기 뇌바 촐와 뇌비 되는 된조 빵파도나 싸와니 빵마도나 아니 뇌비 방열데 입대에레스 아니 갈래갈래 개버르죠 다는 신친이 시바 촐와 마방 바르스는 다디디 양감 공마기 도샤 된조 명라 시바 촐와사 감 공마라 감 공마 변나 삼된라 도차 랑기 네라 차바 딘데 게 삼된라 영와 딘데 용계로 어디 계제디 도와 감 시바 촐와 마방나 시비 도차기 방열데 양 개버르죠
So actually, we have to go a little bit back because I think I misremembered the place from where we have left off before the holidays a little bit. And there's a paragraph that we did not cover yet. And that is paragraph 1061. And just as I have said, in this section of the text, we're actually discussing the many different classifications of the disturbing emotions. Yesterday, we talked a little bit about some other ones, like the 8 fetters, the 4 rivers, the perpetuations, and so on. And so the 7 tendencies in this paragraph 1061, actually it starts in paragraph 1060, and the one we're discussing now is 1061 on page 129, also is one of the many classifications of the disturbing emotions. And so when we speak about the tendencies, it says the tendencies toward the desire of the desire realms and towards anger develop because of not having abandoned the pursuit of pleasurable things. Generally, when we speak about tendencies here, then we find the tendency towards the desire of the desire realm, the tendency towards anger, the tendency towards to yearn for existence, and so on. And that is to say that one has not been able to completely abandon those kind of disturbing emotions. So these are the obscurations, but in a more latent form, tendency to develop them again. So when we speak about the tendency towards the desire of the desire realm, then this speaks about a subtle form of those disturbing emotions, like the subtle, not obvious version that then can be reignited into a manifest expression of the desire realms, or the tendency towards anger. And so the way that we should look at this or understand this is that these tendencies are actually really subtle. They're not obvious. It's as if at one point there was a big fire that broke out in the forest. And when most of the fire has been extinguished and maybe some time has passed, or it rains a lot, even the fire that has burned down the forest in the winter, in the monsoon, like after several months, it wouldn't be obvious anymore. But there is the possibility that some smoldering fire is still present in a tree trunk or in a tree. And it just smolders on without being observable by anyone from the outside, as a potential to reignite the forest or the trees at one point. So while it is smoldering, while there's rain around and there's no dry wood that it could rekindle, the fire is still present there as a potential for future outbreak of the fire. But it wouldn't be visible, it wouldn't be observable easily when it's hidden in like some wood. And the same holds true for these tendencies of the desire realm and anger. If one hasn't abandoned this pursuit for the pleasurable things, then even though that desire or that anger might not be extremely, or might not be observable, might not be visible or manifest at one point, it still lingers as a potential for a future flare-up of these afflictive emotions. And the same also holds true for the tendency to yearn for existence that develops because of not having abandoned the pursuit for existence. That speaks about then the higher realms, the existence in the higher realms, where one might be yearning or being attached to the experience of the meditative absorptions or the abode that one exists in or strives for. So those are those tendencies.
lokbi changje cholwa mabang bes changje sana changma imike jarawre changma da changma re de no lokbi changma se da changma mai ba se binna tanda chirul bagi tanda joba chulim tushu ki joba denzo yoro denzo la lokbi cholwa denzo de mabangwe teni ngajal tang marik pa tang ani lokar tawa tang techum o denzo ki bangjal de gebar gyurgi res penna menga temba tang ani chi tang palangi tulshu la sokpa denzo la teni denzo mapang na lokbi changbar choba te taw denzo mapang na nyembo chungmu tsamji khenba tang sa jikdimba ki menga temba chida palangi tulshu la sokpa nyembo chungmu tsamji kyang ani ngajal ki pangjal di gebar chigires ani tila tene demba la mongne se marikpa ki ani titaw lokbi changbar choba la tenne ani nobi nesulda timbi choba chuki nelu kangimba demba de la mongne tene lokpa lokbi tawa tang tarwa tang di lokbi changbar choba de la tab himba nidu tokchin tene sanje ki demba lamyang dakba tenzo la tesum sawari gyuros 다 로비 창벌 줘봐도 예술나 다 어딘도 연결해 라고 님뭐 중에 캥바당 덴바라 몽바당 로비 람나 줘와당 아니 로비 창벌 줘봐들라 탑 힘반이도 돈 다르도 산제 기 덴바라 대손 된데 사와 연결해서 당보 방열기 아니 갈래 치료 돈이 자기 얘기를 해 이렇게 자지
The tendencies toward conceit, ignorance, belief, and doubt develop because of not having abandoned the pursuit of perverted morality. So when we speak here about perverted morality, then this is the opposite of morality. Morality would be a good or clean kind of behavior, a beneficial way of conducting one's behavior, one's morality. And so if one doesn't abandon the pursuit of the opposite of that, then this is a tendency that creates a tendency for further conceit, ignorance, belief, and doubt. So if one holds on to many of the inefficient or even misleading types of discipline or behavior, like the practice of surrounding oneself with the 5 fires, so the 4 fires in the 4 directions and the sun from above, or behaving like a dog or a cow, those kinds of disciplines, if one thinks that they are actually something worth to pursue, then lead to more like that contains the potential for further conceit, ignorance, belief, and doubt. So when one thinks, this practice has actually quite some potential, and I got the benefit of it, while this is not the case, then that would lead to conceit, then ignorance with regard to how things really are, if one grasps to an not beneficial way of discipline, of morality, or that's contradicting the Four Noble Truths, then that will lead to further development of ignorance, the beliefs, holding a ritual or discipline as paramount specifically, and then doubt with regard to the practice of the Buddhist path or the authentic paths. So doubt with regard to the practice of the Four Noble Truths, for example. That would, like, those are the tendencies that are being there if one does not abandon one's pursuit for perverted morality. So these potentials are there, and then they will gradually develop into very manifest versions of these afflictive emotions.
네, 지원 이바데, 단답해나, 지방나 낭니 고주 라와데 학동나 지기레스니, 근데 숨게도스, 디참 마임바 도도양 디 더발라 둠바네 세 디기양 아니 디기양 영와요 마레베스 학동나 지기 마레베스 다디로 지와도 제다 단데 디캅라 쪼데 고교데 학통나 지기레스네 디 숨이 깝텔라 쪼가조 학통 검 대비 깝라 베나 시네도 검 대비 깝텔라 디니 셈데 제 삼로 제 칠로라 빼면서 숙청 뭐 인도에 된대지 갑토지여로 온디게 삼로 된속이 명라 고교 디디다 시네라 집기레스니 따뜻해서래 디니 약 디기 강마델라 당보데 도발라 듬바스 디데 네 단단하고 도감기소 예동와 잔님보 지심보 로 렉자 라소발라 된조라 영와 당가조 남균이 영 되게로 남균이 지 롱주니 되게로 다 된조기 학동나 딥다 딥기레데 이나양 다단다 쪼데 디데 아니 단다 디디 갑라 디디 가리숨도 세나 랍도 중와라 랍도 중에 되비 뒤 갑라 딥기레스 다 랍도 중세디가라 김니 김메 바랍도 중다 코르비 자샤 탐제 참 좋네 데네 강투도 취지긴스니 란데 조이 니마델라 다 디핀조데 다 더발라 듬바 센 도함게소 다티로 렉조 이동말라다 셈 가능 영화치료 다 온된조기 팁기라다 된조 빵 마도와 깔래 중기레레 라랑 수족의 독차네 저 다들 셰조르도와 연구다다 된조 탐제다 용바랑을 파 찌기라 딥다 딥겨야돼 카토 찌글라 당 어딘데 나오지도
And then there was actually, I didn't read the last sentence that was explained. That is to say, one will be arrogant about possessing even the smallest remedy, deluded to what is true, conceive of a mistaken form of liberation and a technique to achieve that, and harbor doubt about the doctrine of the Buddha. Okay, and now we can move on to a question that came up from yesterday when we were discussing the 5 veils. The veil of excitement and regret was explained to be a particular veil to the practice of of Vipassana, and that it's a particular outward distraction. And the question then was why that is identified as an outward distraction, as the mind being outwardly directed. But the first 2 veils of pleasure seeking and ill will are not explained in that same way. So actually the explanation that is given here of the 5 whales is based on certain circumstances, and which circumstances these are the most prominent or most problematic whales. Generally, we can say, of course, all of them are distractions, all of them are afflictive emotions that interact with each other and propel each other. But here in that particular explanation, we're looking at the instance in which they're most problematic or the most prominent. So looking at the different circumstances, then the explanation is given. The veil of sluggishness and sleep was looking at the circumstance in which it mainly turns up, shamatha meditation. And the veil of excitement and regret was identified with the circumstance of particularly practicing Lakthong. And particularly practicing Vipassana. And so it mainly hinders the development of Vipassana, this excitement and regret. And in that circumstances, it's an outward distraction. And the veil of pleasure seeking, for example, that is identified particularly with the circumstance of taking vows. So particularly when one wishes to take ordination, then the veil of pleasure seeking is what might cause an obstacle to that, which mainly obscures one from being able to go through with taking ordination if one is very attached to the sense pleasures, to sights, smells, tastes, sounds, tangible sensations, and so on. So therefore, they're particularly addressed in the context of taking ordination, and the veil of excitement and regret is just here and particularly focusing on the Vipassana, where it creates the particular obstacle. Generally, of course, the 5 sense objects are also something outwardly, and so on. And also these influence each other. Generally, all of these obscurations are problematic in different circumstances, but here there's just the main focus addressed, the main circumstance in which it's a particularly severe problem.
Jua Shimbachitu Tawa Nyawar Limbas, the Nyawar Limbashi on Tawa Nyawar Limbas, Tawa Nyawar Limbi Kabla, Zuba, La Deshish Capitu, the Candinas, the Didi Tawa La Zubas, Rabdu Jungwa Namta, Kimbi Chavala Shira, Chudo Mewato, the Rabdu Jungwa de Zo. Tachu tene tawa gomba choba tende kolata thosam komsum tende yudi kablata rajung nams ta tawa la shimba roju na tene rajung na la choba lebiyore sete choba de leb sona tene chagman la soba tende phelwi gonni tene yang diang khorwa la yang kewar chigire senta dur choba de tene slebare ta choba de la penna karesena tawa de mega redang mainga res tini je nyentyoge chugi dame to yore yo mare la to tini khashege tawa rangdongin khashege tawa shendongin la to ta tawa tenzo la mathun ne ro tawa nga sangai ngai tawa de zibuin la to tindegi bone tini ta tawa ko la ta rabdu jungwa tenzo ta tawa komba choba la ta thosam komson nang dikala ta tawa la chudo chige ra tini tiri kabla Teni tawa sangbo nyemba tawa to ma to la so ge tsoba mangbo yongyo res te yundu kala ta tinde tsoba le songna tene sem la nyomong ba chadang la so ba phelni ta tida ge dia yang ta chik du tawa de la yang karesna nyawar lemba mangbo china an tige yang khorwa la kyawar chege re la to ta tene tawa nyawar lemba.
So, and then there was another question with regard to the perpetuations and emphasis there on the disagreement, particularly the disagreement that is mentioned between monks based on the clinging to viewpoints. And so when we talk about the perpetuations, the 4 perpetuations, and we look, for example, at the perpetuation, the second perpetuation, which is the perpetuation of unwholesome beliefs. Actually, the perpetuation of beliefs, that refers to the fact that particularly monastics in this context often have a lot of ideas or like a lot of ground for identification with a particular view or belief. So there are many different instances in which the view that people uphold, and this doesn't address lay people as much as it does with the monastics. So the monastics here, the monks, they disagree about a lot of points, very subtle points about view, about belief. So whether something is an explicit or an affirmative negation, whether someone has a certain level of realization or not. Different views might be upheld with regard to Langdong or Shentong, so self-emptiness or other emptiness. There are the different schools, different viewpoints with regard to the realization of different people or classes of realized beings. Different ideas about what selflessness refers to, selflessness of first and selflessness of phenomena, and then also between the so these are all topics that people have different ideas about within the Buddhist traditions, the different Buddhist schools. But there are also many points that are similarly discussed between Buddhists and non-Buddhists, just generally holding on to a particular belief, a particular viewpoint. If one is very attached to one's own viewpoint, then this is the basis for quarreling, for debating, particularly in this more negative way because of attachment to a particular view as an actual disagreement. So people start fighting with each other or debating with each other, disagreeing with each other based on the attachment to a certain view, holding on to that very strongly, and then being attached. So there's attachment to the view and an aversion against other people's views. And so it's that can function as the basis for proliferation of disturbing emotions, and therefore that's called the perpetuation of beliefs.
가상님 말아 무튜니 데 독숨 도차 셰당 디무생게 닝데라 데네 가르세 지 친구와 숨마양 라게레스 당한낭 생게 데네 ngon gombe 다다르 쥐징 독순보 된조 노자 shedan timu sumbo kewa ngomani mangbo semla gomsing 다다양 ne 노자 shedan timu gi wangdula long 쥐징 송네 마방바르스 드니 semlesu mirungwadang semlesu mirungwa스는 다 sem 단다 지 다음에 된 전에 최근 내로 진짜 강다 되니 이제 최 탐적인 내로 간다이 바디 왕둘라 로툼나 셈레수롱 와스 다디 왕두 조미투베나 도샤기 왕두 셰당기 왕기 띠무기 왕두 송웨나 셈레수 미롱와 단스 셈레수 미롱와 단직 달워라 까베 임베나 디스 민나 양까고 타와 숨슨 라비어스 달워라 까와세 셈 디 칭와 숨데 셈라 곰타 쳔니 셈네 달워라 깔레 카고 단치 달워라 깔레 카고 임발라 때니 코에 민라 타와스나 마rum바 녜바스 갑가가도데 신카 된조 민라 타와 신카 타와라 송도선 신카 타와라 송도선 신데 로도 마탑네 신데 샤샤샤 신코르 랑자망고 샤송나 지마 신데 타와라 송네데니 로도 답고디 갑라 빼 깔레 가보요레 고당고 신이양 지 신모메 고나라도 신소 고디 갈라 빼 깔레 가보셔 디능신진이 칭과 숨기 왕돌라 곰지망고 땅땅땅 셈데 딘데 망보 땅송나 땅웨 디네 디 왕돌라 도나 안디 셈디 밀라 따디 도차 땅 셰당다 디무기 왕돌라 송영메가라 데네 셈 타와 숨스네 다 마롱바도 녜바도 신가라 빼샤샤나 신 농사와 신가도 신가 양자를 출라서 거나 빼깔에 하고나 차와 어디게 된다도 타와 숨시장 차스 다디 독데 도샤시당 디무스인데 명디 남당데 양 친구와 숨아 라비에레스 가성 된데서 양 디링디 도샤기 타와 시당기 타와 디무기 타와 생 딘데양 라비에레스 된데 숨류리도.
So if we now continue from where we have left off yesterday, then we are on page 131, paragraph 1070. And generally we can say that now we are looking at different synonyms for the three poisons. Yesterday we already spoke about the shackles, the three shackles, which are the shackles of desire, the shackle of anger, and the shackle of delusion. And now we move on to the three rigidities. Also addressing the three poisons. And they're called the three rigidities because of former habituation. Due to former habituation, one engages in them again, and until one has abandoned them, they make one's mind inflexible and difficult to liberate. Thus, they're called the three rigidities. So, having habituated oneself a lot in the past to the three poisons, through desire, anger, and delusion, and not being able to abandon these three afflictive emotions, and then the mind actually becomes very rigid, very unworkable. When we talk here about flexibility or inflexibility, this means also pliability. So a mind that is pliable, that is workable, in the sense that a mind that can be directed towards the meaning of selflessness, or that can be directed to the understanding of the nature of phenomena. If one is able to direct and place one's mind on those kinds of things, then the mind is pliable. When one can't do that and the mind is just carried away by the afflictive emotions at all time, then it's not pliable. It's not flexible in terms of it cannot be worked towards the nature of phenomena. And so the habituation in desire, anger, and delusion leads to the fact that the mind becomes less pliable or not pliable, and it will become very, very difficult to become free from these strong habits, the habits in these disturbing emotions. And an example that is often given here is that if we consider the mind to be like a field, it becomes very hard to plow that field and really work the field. That means that if we have a field that hasn't been plowed in a long time, that hasn't been used for planting for a long time, all sorts of weeds and things will grow in the ground, and the ground will become very hard, and it will become extremely difficult after some time has passed to go through the field again with the plow and make it soften it up again and make it workable. And so in the same way, these three rigidities, so the three poisons, if we have them in the mind, they make the mind so rigid that it's very difficult to gain the pliability, the workability of the mind again afterwards and become free from the disturbing emotions eventually. And so mainly we have to understand that when we speak about the three rigidities, this also applies again to the three poisons. This is just a synonym to the three poisons, just as the shackles are, and we can also apply the three poisons to them, to this, just as we have seen with the shackle. So there's the rigidity of desire, the rigidity of anger, and the rigidity of delusion.
대신도 대숨라 양 출림 찰웨 아니 양 대숨밍라 디마숨 양 라교여스 대달라 땐네 뒤징보로 깨치 용외 말라 땐네 디 숨디면라 양 딕바숨스 도샤기 딕바 셰당게 딕바 디무기 딕바 딕바숨스 디네 라교여스 대다게 코르왈라 코르싱 곤조 숨당 덴바실라 태좀 사회 숭숨 신데라비스 숭우세나 아지 동말 망보 중에기 규 강할 망보 중에 이렇게 찾아오래 숭우스 근데 숭우숨 양 라비스 대다기 콘당 직바당 이행와 망외나 네바르제베 도차기 지양 소숨당 도차기 지양 셰당게 지양 띠목의 지양 도자 체중 망보 셰당 체중 망보 띠목 체중 망보 안에 어디 딘데 숨양 중요여스 양 대다기 고숨 로바르제베나 녜저 숨세 녜바 저긴기 숨스 딘데 양 라비여스 대다라 때는 되베 풍배나 풍와 숨스 독숨 대왕도 저나 되네 타르와다 탐제 겸바 된저 저르투기 마라 타르와다 탐제 겸비 울풍 차로기라 가서 어디 풍와 숨스 풍만 대다라 때는 류심 용수 동외나 용동 숨스 용수 동외에서다 독숨기 왕들라 도나 되니 동알 망보지 용고베라오데 용수 동와 셈라 강알 류라 강알 망보 용게라오 동와 망봉게라 디나 용동숨스 양 대다기 시비 낙수 깨와 낙소 렘베베나 낙조르숨스 나폴라 조라제게 시바 컴핑 코와데다 지 카르포 마이바제 나포도 나포세나다 페나 동알 당 되니 마데와 되니 냥엔 망보 예베 개차다 오지레다 되진 나포스 다 타르와다 탐제 켐바 남카르포스 어디 나폴라 조라지베는 나조르숨스 타르비 객수 유르베나 객숨 대신도 투바숨 대신도 되니 쯔바단 툭쯔 망보유나 타바숨 다나신 대숨 롱초숨나 겐송게 내당 코르비 내라 시두게 발랐는데 독당신레스 독숨스 렘네 숨세 되니 아니네 디 숨된 나사당신레스 동갈 망보체게 렘네 숨소수 다 명기 남당인데 디 숨데라야 다 명망쇼들이 독숨되게 명들에도와 어디는 유래스 저도
So in the same way, they're called the three impurities because they corrupt one's discipline. So through the afflictive emotions, through the three poisons, here called the three impurities, one engages a lot of corrupt discipline. So one does not engage in discipline correctly, meaning that the afflictive emotions lead to a lot of negative behavior through desire, anger, and ignorance. All sorts of negative actions will be engaged in. Then we have the three evils, since they cause one to undergo birth and death for a long time. So one will have to experience a lot of suffering in samsara if these through these afflictive emotions. So the three evils, because one will have to undergo the suffering of samsara for a long time, undergo birth and death for a long time. The three agonies, since they cause one to spin through samsara and harbor doubts about the three jewels and the four truths. So the agonies is emphasizing, is a term that applies to the three poisons because and they lead to further proliferation of the suffering of samsara, and on top of that also the agony is described through the doubts that one harbors towards the three jewels and the meaning of the four truths. Then we have the three prospects of desire and so forth, because they cause one to have much enmity, fear, and distraction. So the prospect of desire leads to a lot of encountering a lot of causes to be attached to. Then the prospect of anger leads to fear, and the prospect of delusion leads to, as a prospect, to experience a lot of distraction. The three wrongdoings, since they cause one to engage one's three doors in perversion. So one, because of the three poisons, because of these three wrongdoings, the wrongdoing of desire, the wrongdoing of anger, and the wrongdoing of delusion, then one will apply oneself in mistaken ways. So one will engage in actions of one's body, speech, and mind in a wrong way. The three losses, because one is ruined by desire due to them, that means that one is actually deprived of the positive experiences or the ultimate result of liberation and Buddhahood, because of these three poisons, these three losses. And then the three torments, because one's body and mind are completely tormented by them. So we can also call them the three torments, because they just inflict so much suffering and pain on our body and mind due to these three we experience much torment of body and mind. The three jungle chains, because they force one to take all kinds of rebirth in the jungle of existence. Here we're speaking about the jungle of existence as samsara, when we'll be reborn in the dark and dangerous place of samsara again and again of existence, and not this is then compared to the light, the white expression, like the picture of white as depicting all that is good within samsara, or the ultimate liberation. And then we have the three impediments, because they impede liberation. So when desire, anger, and delusion are strong, then we will not be able to attain liberation. So the impediments. Similarly, they are known as the three turmoils, so because they really cause a lot of disruption, a lot of agitation. So they bring about turmoil and decline, the three strifes, because of the three poisons, because of these three afflictive emotions, then there's a lot of disagreement and fighting and warfare and so on. And then we have the three poisons here, meaning that which poisons us within samsara and makes us suffer and not attain the temporary or ultimate results. And then the three plagues, because they make us die, they make us suffer from the sickness of samsara. So through them, all the sufferings, all the ills of samsara will spread. So these are all the synonyms for desire, anger, and delusion.
Yang sakpa sum des de sum mingla yang sakpa sums yul suge keche, tai keche, ti keche, roi keche, reche keche, ani chöge keche la soba tindo dogla tene semde pa yang song ne tene korwa la yang sakbar chibe na de sum degi tene sakbar chibe yore de chene sakpa sum des kande resena nyambar mashapi sapa se dubi kamna se pena do kamla ta pena mangche do duen la yeng dewa gi shisha do la dubi kamde tene semde chidangchi duen la yeng wa tang semde ta kam kongma nang shingi tingye zen denzer la ne tuyo marwa di chine nyambar mashapi sapa se dubi kamna se tene sem 치료기 개체 쪽이 수기 개체 나서봐 개체 쪽이 왕도 손에 치료도 때때 넘버 초신 셈데 초네 데 수다티로 레자라 초신 네 되게 왕게 코르발라티네 레산이 코르발라 마 사버지면은 아니 되비 사바스 냠샤기 사바스나 감공만이 띵해진다 디니나 양 간다요스나 셈카 낭도 때때스 띵해진당 안에 신의 띵해진당 아니 감공마 랑기 사라 감공마 삼댕게 사당 수미게 사텐졸라 디니 도감낭신게 동알 메바 아니 띵해진당 디니 시와 어딘데 예베티니 텐존이 네 야고 띵인 젠네 야고 선에 딘데스네 디니 띵인 젠다 랑기 살라 셈 차게르 셈디네 라이도아 야 감공마든조 어딘데 사와라 때네 양 나리양 카르스는 소감단 소미 감라 깨와네 그 유치게르 디 딜라 때는 시비 사파스 siba 감독으로 사바셔가 디니까라 디니게 내데 쪼데 가르르스나 마리바스 마리비 사바스 몽바데 아 넬루함마고네 디네 디네 치로라 옌도네 디네 코르발라 양 사바르치 바스 쪼데 넬루함마고리 차디 마리비 사바 숨도 양 순소
And then we'll move on to the next classification, which is the classification of the three defilements. The three defilements are taught as defilement of desire, which is to be distracted and create defiled states of one's mind facing outward in the uncomposed states of the desire realms. The defilement of existence, which is to create defiled states by one's mind facing inward in the composed states of the two upper realms, and the defilement of ignorance about the nature of the above two defilements. So when we speak about the three defilements here, then these refer to these different ways of of classifying the disturbing emotions. So the defilement of desire is that which refers to all the disturbing emotions in the desire realm, but ignorance. So in the desire realm, one becomes distracted by the sense pleasures, by the five sense pleasures, through the experience, through the sense sources. So we have the form sense source, the smell sense source, the sound sense source, the taste sense source, and the body sense source, and the Dhamma sense source. And these, through the experience, through those, then this defilement happens, and further experience of suffering within samsara is being caused. So here we speak about the defilements of the desire realm, when the mind is not composed in meditative absorption as it is in the higher realms. Then the defilement of existence, there we speak about the defilements and the conceit of the mind, in the mind stream of the beings of the form and formless realms. So here we speak about the higher realms because of the inward focus of the beings of the form and formless realms, the composed mind and meditative absorption, where still there are disturbing emotions like the attachment to one's own particular abode, one's own place, the abodes of the form and formless realms, and the thought, oh, this is actually so nice, this is actually peaceful, it's not as coarse and terrible as the desire realm, and so this is really peaceful. Thoughts like that, attachment to the experience in the form and formless realms and the absorptions of those realms, then is also like all the different kinds of defilements that originate within that. They are also causes for further rebirths and therefore defilements. And then the very cause or the origin of all of this is taken separately, and that is then the defilement of ignorance that's actually causing the two above mentioned groups, the two above mentioned defilements or classifications of defilements. And that is to say that ignorance, the not knowing how things truly are, not knowing the abiding mode of phenomena, leads then to all this distraction, all this proliferation of afflictive emotions of the desire realm or the higher realms. And so that is then the defilement of ignorance about the nature of the above two defilements, like not knowing what they truly are. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. How does I didn't know putting oneself on hold is even an option. Lamala put himself on hold. How do we get him back? Has anyone seen this before? Where's the option of putting oneself on hold?
I think it could be there is like 3 dots. Maybe clicking on the 3 dots.
Make an attendee, maybe?
I don't know
think-
because my Zoom is in Chinese, so I don't know which one.
I think it happens when
the
you
iPad.
accidentally call someone else.
Who did he call?
Maybe he just clicked on one of the names or something, and then the current call goes on hold. And yeah,
Do you think I can click on make an attendee and force him back?
no
Try.
idea.
Maybe try. Like,
Oh no, that's
It's
no, that's
worth a try.
You can maybe invite him again. Did you try that?
I could probably kick him out and invite him again.
Yeah, why not?
Because I have so many new options. Like I can now remove him from a meeting. I couldn't
Oh
do
my
that
God.
before.
Extra
Okay.
power.
Yes. I use that extra power and call him again.
Of course.
But then he's still
Only use it for good things. I'm looking under more actions and I don't see anything that says put yourself on hold because it just sounds so strange to even want to do.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. So I called him back in. Kari China. Det skjuer du så, sang ma.
I think Lama
Waiting
is
for
muted.
cheese.
Ah, yeah.
Да.
공다.
개만해.
디니 녀몽바 데다기 데다기 콩로 캄 공만이나 멜라스 셴남 캄 숨 탐제나 여도스 다단다디 sakbasumnani kongro de kam kongmani la mes ta khasang ni yala de kunin narsim kus ngi ke jowa khasang ma odi taki wala tagla ngoman no pache song teni tandan no pachal kido maung ban no pache ki res ani tagi wala yang tinang sing chin no pach jalgi ngoman no pache song tandan no pachal kido maung ban no pache ki res nga ge chao la khoi ngoma pen daw song ani tanda pen takido maung ba pen ta ko gyurgi re la odi sum je kodi mingla kuni narsimba kus kam kongmani na kongdo mebade kanasina kuni narsimba ge kodi mes di mebade kanjinresena ane shine ge lembi chirdans da kam kongmani la zo chewa samden dang shine kangla semde ne tedi kapdela ane tanda de kongdo la so wa tati de kongdo de da mes kuni narsimba kodang ane shine ge lembi chirna kam kongmani na kongdo de melas 네 신데 감숨 탐젤라 유스
Then we continue with paragraph 1073 now. Regarding the disturbing emotions, anger is absent in the two upper realms, whereas all the others are present in all three realms. So when we look at the three defilements, these three classifications here of the disturbing emotions into the defilement of desire, defilement of existence, and the defilement of ignorance, then these contain the afflictive emotions, particularly anger. Is only present in the desire realm, in the sense of the wrathful kind of anger, of keeping resentment towards those who have harmed, harm, and will harm oneself, have harmed, harm, and will harm those who belong to oneself, so those who are close to one, and those who will benefit or have benefited our enemies. So in all of these cases, we hold some sort of aggression, some sort of anger, here not being the same as the anger of the three poisons, but some sort of resentment in the mind, some aggression towards these objects in the mind. And that does not exist in the upper realms, because in the meditative absorption of those upper realms, those kinds of harm and harmful thoughts of wanting to harm someone else out of resentment is does not exist in the stream of being of someone who is engaging in the meditative absorption of these higher realms. So that kind does not exist there.
텐존에 다 독숨게 다 민게 남장 드네 송산의 양 녀몽바 텐솔라 야 통람게 방자당 곰랑게 방자를 신양 딘데스네 녀몽바게 딘데 민가 요레스 송아래 딘인두 감숨나 예베 녀몽바스 대소 통람당 곰람게 방저르와 딘네 가서 유에스네 랍나 유제나스 드니 통람 다 당보 통람 예방자 가서 유에스디 장가자고 유래 통람도 아니 동알당 군중당 고바당 람제 덴바시라 아니 덴바시기 아니 넬루통웨 방자시스 dungal demba ge thongwe pangja kunjung demba thongwe pangja kobe demba thongwe pangja lamge demba thongwe pangjas shich di tengdula ta komlam la mise diro shitse amra komlam chik dauzi ne komlam ge pangja da che de ringa se chitang ta de 통남 당 공랑이 빵자 간대 열에서나 빵자 링가 쓰는 열에스 링가 데 칸에서나 동알 덴바 통위 빵자다 제 군중 덴바 통위 빵자다 니 다나신 고비 덴바 통위 빵자당 숨 람게 덴바 통위 빵자당 시 아니 곰람게 빵자당 지네 어디 나오데면라 빵자 링가스 빵자 마라왕가스 야완레스 디네스니 에다 에와여스 다른 집안에 약강나 빼나 독숨대라 지 독숨 꼴라 계자만 무시가 되나 진짜 양데 통남지 방자당 공남지 방자라 양 간대요래스니 양들 말을 남요래 야와래.
And now we move on to the next classification, and that is to look at which of the discards are or which of the deflective emotions are discards on the path of seeing and cultivation. So how many of the disturbing emotions present in the three realms are discards by means of the path of seeing and cultivation respectively? So here we look at what is abandoned when the path of seeing and the path of cultivation are achieved. Which of the disturbing emotions constitutes that which will be abandoned by these paths? And on the path of seeing, there are four classes of discards by means of seeing the truth, seeing the four truths of suffering, origin, cessation, and path. So when we try to enumerate how many different discards there are, then first we look at the path of seeing. And the path of seeing is classified in terms of the recognition or the direct observance of the Four Noble Truths. So there is an aspect, or there are afflictive emotions that get abandoned when the truth of suffering is being perceived. There are afflictive emotions that are being abandoned when the truth of origin is being seen. There are afflictive emotions that are being abandoned when the truth of cessation are being seen. And there are afflictive emotions that are abandoned when the truth of the path is being seen. And so that all constitutes the path of seeing when this has happened. So accordingly, the afflictive emotions that are being abandoned on each of when seeing each of these Four Noble Truths are counted here in the enumeration of discards on the path of seeing. And so this means that when one sees the true nature of each of these Four Noble Truths, then there are respective things that are being discarded, that are being abandoned, afflictive emotions that are abandoned when that happens. And so the path of seeing is divided into the direct realization of the nature of the truth of suffering, the truth of origin, the truth of cessation, and the truth of the path. The path of cultivation, though, is not divided in that way. So there we count only one. All the afflictions present there are only counted together, or that the discards, the things that are being abandoned by the path of cultivation, are one. There's no distinction in the Four Noble Truths. So counting those together, we actually have 5 classes of discards. So we have the discards when perceiving the four types of discards on the path of seeing for each of the truths, and then the path of cultivation. And those are the five that we are used as the basis here. And in addition to these, there are the discards by means of the path of cultivation. Thus, the discards are grouped into 5 classes. So these are the 5 classes of discards that are that then contain a number, the classification of the different afflictive emotions, like the 3 poisons and so on, and the discussion of whether they are discarded through something or not.
No, the pangja rig ngapote ani dokamla charne tene pangja kaso pangido tene sukhamla ani yang de pangja rig ngapona kande redo tene sume khamla yang kande ro tene yang rimashin yongere ste tangbo ta debi khamgi kola tene ma sungidos debi kham der
And these 5 classes of discards are then also applied to the 3 realms. So there are these 5 classes of discards as they are present in the desire realm. There are 5 classes of discards as they pertain to the form realm, and there are 5 classes of discards as they pertain to the formless realm. And so we will start only looking and enumerating the 5 classes of discards of the desire realm.
Tiringdoro pangja ringas, 통감게 pangja ringas in the Moshigores, Tatinamala Mangolege de Indugalata, pangja ringas, Tonglam the Dungal demba tongue pangja, Kunjung demba tongue pangja, Gobi demba tongue pangja, Lamgi demba tongue pangja, Shidang, Komnam ge pangjas. Pangja ringas odinasini mo shegore tiring didang tene doksumgi kolla tene namrang mangbo yowaji tene chinsons tene chamshagi ngwamelam sumein.
So if you stop here for today, it's important that you remember this last point, because we will be talking about this for quite a while. That there are discards that are being abandoned on the path of seeing, and there are discards abandoned on the path of cultivation. And within the path of seeing, there are discards that are abandoned when perceiving the truth of suffering, the truth of origin, the truth of cessation, and the truth of the path. So when we count these separately, then we come to 5, like 4. Count to 5. 4 for the path of seeing, the 4 truths, and then the 5th is the path of cultivation, the discards on the path of cultivation. So that's important to remember and to be clear about what these 5 classes of discards are, because we will talk about this for quite a while. So this is the last important point that we covered today. The other thing that we covered in today's class was then the different names, the different synonyms for the 3 poisons. And with that, now I would like to stop here for today, and please recite the dedication and aspiration verses with me.
Lo en jambal bawe jendar kemba dang kundo sangbo de shen de da kunje jeso ndalo kewa de da thamje rando ngo en du sum shekbe nyarwa thamje Ngova gangla chodo ngamba de dage gebe zawa di gwenja sangbo chechire rabdo ngova di sunam di tamje simba nye tomne nye chanam pamje ne jenga na che balag chubai Sebe tsone rowa rolowa sho kewa ni kewo gun sonam yeshe tsozo shen sonam yeshe lejo tamba kunye tomba sho lo chu su rowa ra jinye labdo so chu lamdo rowa ra jinye labdo solo lam chulwa se wara jinye labdo so Chulba yeshe so charwara chenye lamdo so. Laso chela chayo.
Jela Gio. So when I was going through the different options here in Teams, when we tried to get Lamala back, I saw we have breakout rooms now. I just wanted to share this with you. It's good news for discussions. Yeah. For those of you who were probably not here yesterday, the attendance quiz has changed a little bit. It's posted once a week, and you can every day just open it, say that you have watched it, give your comment, and then submit it at the end of the week. Don't submit it straight away, but only once you have completed it completely. And then the questions, if you have questions about the material, please post them below the video. So in the channel that says recordings, notes, clarifications, all of that. The major channel name, recording notes, clarifications. And if you have seen that, I post a recording there, of course, the outline of that class, so the topics that we discussed, and also sooner rather than later, hopefully, some notes about what we have covered. So instead of getting a major file last minute before the next week's review class, I'm actually going to post some review notes every day, roughly, with those recordings. So please, if you have questions, just post them there, write them down there, or if you feel uncomfortable with everyone reading your questions, then send them to me in the chat. Okay, and everything else we'll discuss tomorrow in the review classes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tukshinang. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sangi J Young.
Sangi Jeong.
Thank you.
Wait. Stop recording.